Well, that means many things in very elementary mathematic terms, which all of us can understand. And not only then, which all of us can understand, which disprove the fact of any alternate solution whatsoever. There is only one answer to the question, what does 3 plus 5 equal? There is only one answer to the question, what does 4 plus 3 equal? Likewise, there is one and one only solution to the question, what is just actual economy? Number one.
Okay, before Mike, sorry, I don't know if you want to, if I can just maybe interject there a little bit. I don't know if you want to elaborate further on that, or if I can just briefly mention that all of the people that you've mentioned, the Stephen Zarlingers, the Bill Stills, the Ellen Browns, and so on, they are not offering any kind of real solution to the problem that we face with our monetary system. They are offering partial, maybe, solutions and suggestions that, in essence, are really just put up for discussion. What they are doing, I must admit, is raising the awareness of the people out there more and more. Apart from the fact of what's going on in the economy, I think is opening people's eyes. But they are certainly informing people. The problem, and that you rightly say, is that they are not only informing, they're offering suggestions for a fix, which is not a true fix. Now, of course, your mathematically perfected economy, you have done the math on it, and you can say, in probably no uncertain terms, that it is a fix.
Well, it isn't just that I've done the math to prove the principles of mathematically perfected economy. I've also done the math for transforming the resultant state of affairs into a rectification of the crimes against us. And I've resolved that to, likewise, to a solution, meaning explicitly to indicate that it is likewise absolute. Now, there are some people who don't understand what the scope of this term solution is. I mean, it's funny how this comes up. People will ask what solution even means. You know, even people who are advocating that something is solution have asked me, even on a fairly regular basis, what solution means. You know, and it's a preposterous thing that we should ever explain that to anyone. Now, I personally see in every one of these plagiarists a motive of personal gain, not always strictly monetary, but the fact of the matter is the very work of each and every one of them, and I mean I can name names. I have hard drives full of material collected from these people to prove their plagiarism. Hard drives full of it. And I mean, I can spend all day, every day for a week on what I can collect in one day on Ellen Hodgson Brown alone. I could take her work and I can go on and on. Everything that comes out of her mouth is wrong. And I can explain this. Now, why did that person stand up advocating solution? And she has advocated solution. She's even told me in debates with her that her solution was, quote, 1 trillion times more likely to be passed by Congress than, unquote, mine. 1 trillion times. I asked her for her math, as if Congress wasn't going to realize that she, too, was taking away the interest of the banks and still calling it interest and introducing it into circulation for some reason which follows a pattern which is disproven by the very initial observations a true researcher would do of the nature of the currency, which observations would disprove any justification for interest whatever. The debt isn't even owed these pretended creditors. They only absorb the minimal, negligible costs of publishing evidence of our promissory obligations to each other. They launder the principal into their possession and then pretend that that much is risked and that justifies interest. The whole thing is a lie. And so a person that has done even the very most rudimentary analysis of these things from their root core would have discovered that and never, ever, ever would have sought to preserve interest as a purported solution. That's absolutely, it is so blatantly neophitical that it astonishes me that anyone reads her work or listens to her at all. Now, on the contrary, what they've accomplished by spreading the word is they've raised these huge factions, which we likewise must now overcome, who advocate that money can't be a debt. And I mean, I can name people from Ron Paul forums, for instance, who just, no matter how exhaustively you explain the fact that money can only be an obligation, which equates to a debt, they simply come around, when you go full circle with them, they come around and say, they just reassert the same thing that you've just disproven. And there aren't just 10 of these people in the world. There aren't hundreds. There aren't thousands. There aren't tens of thousands. There are millions who have the wrong idea because people like Ellen Hodgson Brown went out to seek fortune for herself on ideas which not only are not even hers, but which she still to this day doesn't even understand. And so these people need straightened out so that we ourselves can eliminate this crime from us. We're going to suffer all kinds of other problems if these people got their way, that money can't be a debt. So it's important that we understand this fact that money, in fact, can only be an obligation if it has integrity at all, because integrity is a commitment to an obligation. What is the obligation? The obligation, in the case of a promissory note, is to pay out of circulation for our consumption of others' production as we consume of it, in the case of mathematically perfected economy. Does this mean that we are going to go into great debt because mathematically perfected economy licenses us to borrow more than we do now? Oh, absolutely not. First of all, we could only borrow, we're not borrowing at all. You're not even borrowing from a central banking system. Second of all, you are not necessarily going into what we call debt at all in issuing promissory obligations. What do I mean by that? The extent of the commitments that you can make is certified in certifying your creditworthiness. So we cannot overborrow for the mere fact that we certify creditworthiness under mathematically perfected economy. But we must overborrow under the present obfuscation of the currency, because interest compels a perpetual escalation of borrowing until we suffer a terminal sum of debt. So those are those two differences. But are we going into debt in mathematically perfected economy? Let's just say that I made $100,000 a year for 20 years. Let's say I made more than that. I made $125,000 a year under mathematically perfected economy, and I put away $100,000 a year out of $125,000 a year salary. So in 20 years, I've saved $2 million. Now, suppose I bought a new car. I don't have to borrow any money at all to buy that car. I could pay for it cash. Suppose, on the other hand, under mathematically perfected economy, instead of paying cash for it, and I understand that I'm advocating something which is self-destructive under the present obfuscation of the currency. We have to understand a further thing about money, and I've already mentioned it. I raised the fact that the only proper circulation is representative of all wealth. Now, under mathematically perfected economy, that's accomplished in two ways. We allow the individual, we restore the right of the individual to issue their own promissory notes, and this, of course, is how all production can be financed, if we so choose, to engage in issuance of a promissory note. But in the case that I'm just describing, I've got $2 million saved up, and I can pay cash for the brand new car. Which betters the subjects of the economy? Well, in fact, what betters the subjects of the economy is for me to issue a promissory note for the car. Why? Because the value of the car is necessary to be introduced into circulation to sustain all of the related economic activity, what we call industry and commerce. So the producers of the car get their bills paid and so on and so forth. Instead of introducing currency back into circulation from my savings, which already represents something else and is committed to be paid out of circulation for that thing. So the issuance of a promissory note is an enablement of the participants of the economy, which it enables them to sustain the production which has been delivered to me. Now, when I issue the promissory note, does it put me in debt to the degree of the car? Absolutely not. Why? It's not a debt as we know debt at all. On the contrary, it is explicitly an obligation to pay for the car as I consume of it. So it's going to come out of my savings, you see, because if I'm not earning anything further, or it's going to come out of further earning if I am. But the thing is, by issuing a promissory obligation, it doesn't cost me 1 penny more, and it sustains all the further economic activity which is necessary to sustain to continue producing cars. You see, if we have a minute circulation and we all saved out of it and there's nothing actually circulating around anymore, nothing can happen. You see, it's by introducing the circulation respective to further property which is created, which sustains the conveyance and further production of such property, which allows us to prosper. So it's not debt that we're discussing here. It's an obligation to pay as we consume of something. If a new couple gets married and want to move into a $100,000 home with a 100-year lifespan, at a linear rate of depreciation, mathematically perfected economy allows them to do that. If we don't introduce the money into circulation, then the money doesn't exist in circulation relative to sustaining the industrial activity which produces such homes. So they can't be produced because we can't afford to do that. So effectively, we're not really talking about assuming indebtedness. We're actually talking about monetizing our production. And we're doing that by committing to pay for the production as we consume of it, which is not actually to assume a debt. It's the same as hooking up your house to the electrical power company. Okay, so my electric bills are going to be $60 a month or whatever they are. after we do this? Have I assumed a